Coming up on the program today. Myanmar's elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi is charged by the country's police. U.S. President Joe Biden signs more executive orders on asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border, legal migration, and reunifying families. Plus, the International Criminal Court rules it has jurisdiction in Iran-U.S. sanction dispute. Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Akaite Afia. Myanmar's elected civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been charged by the country's police. The charges include breaching import and export laws and possession of unlawful communication devices. The charges include, as we mentioned, the charges do include breaching import and export laws, and here her whereabouts remain unclear.
Indeed, the military have not disclosed where Aung San Suu Kyi and deposed President Win Myint are being kept. But the party, the NLD, says they are currently under house arrest. Neither have been heard from since the military seized power. The military has justified the coup by alleging fraud in last November's elections, which Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won decisively. The accusations against Suu Kyi are contained in a police document called a First Initial Report, submitted to a court. It alleges that Ms. Suu Kyi illegally imported and used communications equipment, walkie-talkies, found at her home in Nay Pyi Taw. She was remanded in custody to question witnesses, request evidence, and seek legal counsel. After questioning the defendant, the document says. Win Myint, on the other hand, is accused under the National Disaster Management Law of meeting supporters in a 220-vehicle motorcade during the election campaign in breach of COVID-19 restrictions. Coup leader Min Aung Hlaing on Tuesday told the first meeting of his new government that it was inevitable the army would have to take power after its protests over alleged election fraud last year were dismissed. Security remains tight at government residence compound in Nay Pyi Taw, where members of parliament are being detained following the coup. There has been global outcry since Monday as global leaders call for Suu Kyi's release. Amidst the global condemnation have been global protests as well, like this one in Sydney, Australia.
We strongly condemn Myanmar military coup. We recognize elected NLD government as well as the 2020 election results. We demand immediate and unconditional release of State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi and all political detainees.
And back home, the people protest with the sound of horns and pans in the biggest city of Yangon. Meanwhile, hospital medics are either stopping work or continuing, but wearing symbols of defiance and simmering anger over the suppression of the country's short-lived democracy.
And now our check-in on the global pandemic. Saudi Arabia has announced it is suspending entry to travelers from 20 countries, including the US, the UK, and the UAE. Other countries making the list include Argentina, Germany, Indonesia, Ireland, Italy, Pakistan, Brazil, Portugal, Turkey, South Africa, Sweden, Switzerland, France, Lebanon, Egypt, India, and Japan. The measures include people coming from elsewhere but who have been in these countries on the list at any time in the previous 14 days. However, Saudi citizens, diplomats, and health practitioners and their families are exempt from the ban. Also, a global vaccine initiative, better known as the COVAX Initiative, says it aims to distribute at least 240 million doses of inoculations against COVID-19 in the first half of this year. The forecast says an initial batch of 240 million doses will cover on average 3.3% of the total populations of 145 participating countries. Meanwhile, AstraZeneca says it is working on vaccines against coronavirus variants and wants to have them ready as rapidly as possible. Here's more in today's Global Update.
COVID-19 vaccines might offer protection against severe disease, even as coronavirus variants evolve to better allow continued transmission between people. That's according to the head of Oxford Vaccine Group, Andrew Pollard. A joint study between Pollard's University of Oxford and its pharmaceutical partner AstraZeneca says the vaccine had 76% efficacy against symptomatic infection for 3 months after a single dose, which increased if the second shot is delayed, back in Britain's vaccine rollout policy.
There is good protection from the first dose right up until the second dose is given, which is extremely good news. But also that in that period, we found that about 2/3 fewer people were PCR positive and therefore infected and at risk of transmitting onto other people. So that's a big reduction in the number of individuals in the community.
Yeah, sure.
For the British government, this is good news.
Relax your shoulder for me, please. And just relax your shoulder for me.
I'd like to try and change, but...
That is really good news. It's very positive because we know that vaccines are the way out of this, and this new information from Oxford shows that the Oxford jab works. And given all the questions that have been raised and what's going on internationally, I think it's very important that we show the world that the Oxford jab works and works well.
Si vous n'avez pas votre test.
Elsewhere in Europe, French gendarmes are conducting road checks at its border with Belgium, which thousands of people cross every day, especially for work. It's part of toughened restrictions amid country's COVID-19 battle.
Sur le news, ils n'ont rien dit que c'est besoin d'un attest pour aller en France.
All arrivals into France from outside the European Union are currently banned, and all visitors from European Union nations are required to show a negative PCR test, with the exception of cross-border workers and truckers. Meanwhile, Germany has sent more than 20 doctors and nurses together with ventilators and hospital beds to COVID-19-stricken Portugal, where severe acceleration in cases has prompted several European nations to offer help. A 400 million military transport plane carrying 26 doctors, nurses and hygiene experts, as well as 40 mobile and 10 stationary ventilators left for Lisbon from Wunstorf Air Base near Hanover. Finally, a team of investigators working on behalf of the World Health Organization research lab in central Chinese city of Wuhan as part of their hunt for clues as to where global COVID-19 pandemic originated. The institute has been at the center of a number of conspiracy theories claiming that the first coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan at the end of 2019 was caused by a lab leak.
Over to the United States now, as President Joe Biden signs more executive orders, this time concerning asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border, legal immigration, and reunifying families. The asylum-focused order will mandate a review of the Migrant Protection Protocols, a controversial program that pushed 65,000 asylum seekers back to Mexico to wait for U.S. court hearings. The Biden administration has stopped adding people to the program, but it has not yet outlined how it will process these claims of those already enrolled. The executive order on legal immigration calls for a review of a Trump-era rule that made it harder for poorer immigrants to obtain permanent residency in the United States. The Biden administration has also created a task force to reunite migrant families who were separated at the U.S.-Mexico border by Trump's 2018 zero-tolerance border strategy.
To address the causes of migration, I'm going to start in the first order, which is a reestablishment of the interagency task force and the reunification of families. And remove the stain. The second order I'm signing is creating a comprehensive regional framework to address the causes of migration and to manage migration throughout the North and Central America, and to provide a safe and orderly processing of asylum seekers at the United States border. And the third order I'm signing is restoring the faith in our legal immigration system and strengthening immigration and inclusion efforts for new Americans. And my grandfather would say, the grace of God and the goodwill of the neighbors will reunite these children and reestablish our reputation.
Joining us now is Channels Television's Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. She joins us from Washington. Maria, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So the news about the executive orders must have come as good news to those who are affected. What are the fine lines in the orders that may get lost in translation?
You're exactly correct. This is, I think, a first step. The fine lines that are going to get lost in translation is, yes, there's a lot of input on the actual land borders of the U.S., and that's really dealing with safety issues. Obviously, there have been many safety breaches at the border, especially for those that are trying to enter the U.S., and their safety and security is oftentimes at risk due to the fact of some of those implemented policies by the previous president, Donald Trump. And so those things are going to be initially dealt with. But the reality is what's really being focused on here is naturalization, being able to allow individuals who are looking to receive citizenship in the U.S., making that process easier. There's some things that were put in place. For example, individuals that were coming to the U.S. And that would receive sponsorship from individuals if they were to get on any type of public assistance while being here, that fine would be brought on to them, and someone will be having to repay that. And so those type of orders are actually being removed by President Biden. But again, it has been clearly stated that this is going to be a process. It's not going to be overnight. We're not going to begin to see a whole new immigration policy and beginning to see individuals being able to enter the U.S. In a different manner, because there's going to have to be a review process. So really, this is letting Homeland Security, which it's not ironic, it probably was definitely planned this way, that the Homeland Security Secretary was confirmed yesterday, and shortly thereafter, these executive orders were signed. So it's really giving marching orders from the president to Homeland Security, to the State Department, to really take a review of these policies and to ensure that there are improved policies for safety, security, and to ensure that individuals are able to integrate and migrate to the U.S. safely, securely, in a manner that meets the guidelines that President has set forth.
Well, Maria, let's talk about the review of the public charge. How have immigrants been affected by this, and how would the Biden administration try to remedy that?
Well, individuals have been affected. Families have been separated, as we've seen over the last 6 months. Family separation has been a huge issue. Individuals who have been here for educational purposes, those individuals oftentimes have not been able to complete their degrees. Individuals that are coming here for work oftentimes have been sent back. We've seen what happened with ISIS. And so this is really to address kind of how individuals are coming in legally to the country, ensure there are clear protocols in place, and that it does enhance the U.S.'s immigration policies to allow for a healthy and robust immigration plan moving forward.
And I know these orders mainly concern those coming in through the U.S. land borders. Do they say anything about people coming in from other parts of the world as well?
Well, the real issue with the land borders are those security issues that we briefly talked about, and that's really going to address that issue. But when you're talking about the full immigration policy, that is really the focal point of this executive order. It's for anyone entering the U.S. To allow for a legal process that is not prohibiting, but enhances and allows for the ability to come into the U.S. and to whether or not you want to become a citizen, you want to be on a work visa, you want to be here for school or education, allows for that to be done legally, efficiently, in a manner that promotes it rather than hinders the process.
All right. Well, Maria, thanks so much for joining us today, and do stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Coming up after the break. Britain continues to remember Captain Sir Tom for his efforts at raising funds for his country's NHS at Parliament, observing a moment of silence for him. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Judges at the highest United Nations Court for disputes between states have ruled that they can hear a case filed by Iran against the United States seeking to have sanctions against Tehran lifted. A majority of Panel of 16 judges found that the International Court of Justice, also known as the World Court, has jurisdiction in the dispute. Iran brought the case in 2018 after former President Donald Trump's administration imposed sanctions, following Trump's decision to abandon a 2015 pact under which Iran accepted curbs to its nuclear program. Current U.S. President Joe Biden, though, has said he wants a return to that pact, although Tehran and Washington still disagree on steps to be taken for that to happen. And turning to Russia now, the country's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, has described reaction by Western countries to Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny's jailing was a hysteria. Mr. Lavrov also says the Russian Foreign Ministry has made a video compilation aimed to show the difference between reaction to unauthorized rallies by the Russian police and police of European countries, and that the ministry has sent the video to EU officials. The West has called on Moscow to release Navalny, but Russia has told it to stay out of its foreign sovereign affairs. And to the Italian president, who has asked the former head of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, to form a new government, following the previous coalition collapse. President Sergio Mattarella said Italy needed a high-profile government to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic and the worst economic crisis in decades. Politicians failed to agree a coalition following the resignation of Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte last week. Draghi himself has accepted the task of trying to form a new government to end the long-running political crisis that has plagued the country. He is also confident of sufficient backing in Parliament. He additionally hopes for unity from political forces as well as society at large. French politics, or should we say international relations, took a different turn today when President Emmanuel Macron was so determined to hold his own umbrella at a rain-dampened event outside the Élysée Palace that he shooed away aides 3 times when they tried to take it from him. As Slovak Prime Minister Igor Matovic spoke to reporters before a meeting with Macron, a female aide came out and handed the French leader a black umbrella. Macron took it and held it over his Slovakian guest. A second female aide arrived and offered to hold the first umbrella for Macron. He gestured to her that there was no need. When the two men finished speaking to the media and turned to walk back up the steps to the Élysée Palace, the military aide approached and offered to take Macron's umbrella. Macron ignored him and kept holding it over Matovic. The second female aide then came back again and offered to take the umbrella, but Macron again brushed her off. He finally surrendered it when he got to the top of the steps on his way inside and needed both hands free to put his mask on. The UK Parliament today held a minute's silence for Captain Tom Moore. The 100-year-old who died on Tuesday, he'd been fighting cancer for 5 years and was taken into the hospital suffering from pneumonia and COVID-19. After the minute of silence, Prime Minister Boris Johnson paid tribute to Moore and urged Britons later on Wednesday to clap for him and the health workers he raised funds for to, quote, show our appreciation of him and all that he stood for and believed in.
This is the most extraordinary thing, one of the proudest moments in my career, but it's not about me, it's about Captain Tom. Thank you for giving him a number 1 on his 100th birthday. You are the best. God bless you.
And finally on the program, a Kenyan entrepreneur has developed a machine that recycles discarded plastic waste into paving stones for use in construction projects. Nzambi Mati's factory keeps plastic out of landfills and offers a cheaper alternative to conventional concrete paving slabs.
Nzambi Mati hauls the brick hard against the school footpath made using her recycled plastic bricks in the Kenyan capital. It does not crack.
Our product is almost 5 to 7 times stronger than the concrete, and this is because of the basic material structure of the brick itself. Our pavers, because they're made out of recycled plastic, and plastic is polymerous in nature, or rather it's thread-like. So therefore it doesn't have a lot of pocket holes, therefore making it less brittle compared to concrete. So that's why it doesn't break very easily.
Her factory produces 1,500 bricks per day with dimensions of 120 millimeters and 110 millimeters and depths ranging from 30 millimeters to 80 millimeters. The factory recycles high-density polythene, low-density polythene, and polypropylene waste plastic. Marti, a materials engineer who designed her own machines, says that her factory had recycled 20 tons of waste plastic after she founded her factory in 2017, adding that they plan to add another bigger production line that would at most triple their capacity.
We knew how to make one brick. So we needed to know if we had to bring this product to the market, we needed to know how to make 1,000 or 5,000 because one project cannot be just one brick. So after figuring out how to make one brick, now the next step was how to make 1,000. Making 1,000, we need machines.
The Ministry of Environment and Forestry says Kenya produces 600,000 tons of plastic bottles annually, of which 400,000 tons are used locally, with only 9% of it recycled. The low levels of recycling have prompted many environmental groups to call for a consumer deposit to be levied on plastic bottles, similar to the one some Kenyan companies levies on glass bottles. Martin says she created her factory after becoming tired of waiting for the government to solve the issue.
I was tired of being in the sidelines. You're just there waiting for someone to sort the plastic issue. You're just waiting for the government or the municipality or just someone else other than yourself. So that was the first driver. And then the other thing was, it was almost out of sheer curiosity to see, can this happen? Because I had seen it been happening in different parts of the world and I knew it could be replicated here in Kenya.
After Ecuador introduced a scheme where customers paid 2 cents per bottle in 2011, recycling plastic bottles shot up from 30% to 80% the next year.
Well, that definitely sounds like a great way to recycle plastic waste. That's all we have for the program today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Makaite Afia. Have a great evening and stay safe.